Hello, thank you for joining me. So in this video I'd like to show you an alternative to how to do the T-section we did in the previous video. In this one what we're going to do is we're going to draw a horizontal line, use the midpoint of that line in order to make that coincident with the origin. And we're also going to draw a center line from the origin up vertically like we did before, dimension that. And then we're going to do some offsets of those lines and create our part and eventually just trim everything out by using a trim tool. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's go to our front plane, and if you don't pick a plane first but go into the sketch element, it's going to ask you for what plane you want to do, so what plane you want to sketch on. So you can go ahead and do it this way just by clicking on one of the three primary planes that you can start with. So now we have the right plane or the front plane selected. We're going to go to the center line, draw a vertical center line just like we did before. We're going to make that about 100, and don't quite have it there. We can put the dimension on since we're going to use that as a reference later. We're going to go ahead and mention that right now. So now it's at 100. We're going to draw a line horizontally, as I mentioned. We're going to take the midpoint of that line, simply by right-clicking on that line, select midpoint. With the Control key depressed, click on the endpoint of the center line or the origin. It's going to select the origin. And with our mouse shortcuts, we're going to choose coincident. Now it really made that line small, just as it was moving it. It kind of stretched it really teeny tiny. That happens, so you don't panic. You just go ahead and grab those two blue endpoints, either one or the other, and move those out. Because we have a midpoint object or a midpoint sketch relation here, if we move on one point, if we take one point and move it around like that, it always remains symmetric about the center line, about the origin that we have that relationship to. Okay, let's do some offsets. Offset entities. We're going to first do the 10mm one. We're going to click on this line and offset that to the top. Offset entities, we can choose that again one more time if you like, or if you press the enter key right now, it automatically gets you there. We're going to take it from 10, make that 5. We're going to offset each one of these two lines off to the side. Enter again. Sorry about that. Click on this line. It's already going to put it over that line for whatever reason. We're going to put it on this side simply by clicking on that side, and now we have it there. Let's connect our endpoints down here. Our endpoints on the top by connecting the dots, and we're all set. Now, only two blue lines we have left is this line here, so let's go ahead and dimension that down on the bottom. That needs to be 75mm, and now everything's black. The problem with this sketch is that we have these extra lines in here. We need to have enclosed geometry, and although we can use all this as enclosed geometry, it just involves a lot more steps. So let's do this. What we're going to do is we're going to trim out this end of this line in here between these two lines, and this line, the bottom of this line down here, being careful not to trim out our center line. The way you do that is you go up to your sketch toolbar on the command manager, go to trim entities, and if it's not selected, do power trim. And this is the way the power trim works. It follows your cursor around. So right now it's not doing anything because we don't have anything to press, but you need to depress your left mouse button and you start. And we do that just for a demonstration. Watch my cursor down here. Pressing the left mouse button, you can see it kind of creating a trace down there. If I were to take that trace and hit something, bang, takes it out. I'm going to lift my left mouse button. Power trim is still selected. I'm going to go across my center line and do it over here. Trace, trace, bang. It's out. It's exactly what we want. So these two 5mm dimensions are kind of weird. Oops. Power trim is still on. So escape gets us out of that. We could erase that, erase this one, and we could put a 10mm dimension across that, and that should work. That's a little bit more descriptive than two 5s. And then green check mark, and the only thing it's missing up here is that yes, it's going to be 10mm, but it can move. So to make this correct, we're going to right click in this line, select midpoint, the endpoint of that line, make those coincident, or if you want to do this, right click in that midpoint, click in this point, go to your mouse shortcuts and make that coincident. It's a lot less time if you do it that way. And now it's all black again. Everything's correct. We have all the proper dimensions on here. Although we have kind of redundant dimensions here too, so this is something else you might want to do. Just take out one of these dimensions, that dimension here, and then we could take this line and establish a sketch relationship between those two by making those equal. Now everything's black, everything's defined with just 3 dimensions. That sounds good to me. Let's go to features, extrude boss base, mid plane, 250 millimeters, and we're as right as rain. Either one of those methods will work. This one seems to be a little bit more involved, but if you have complex geometry, doing something like this might be a little bit more fun, and in the long term a little bit more productive. So, thank you for joining me. Join me for other films.